Hey y'all, happy Monday. Hope you guys had a good weekend. Happy May. We have 3 weeks left in this school year, so we're almost done. I know it's getting nice and y'all want to be done. So hang in there for at least a few more weeks and then we will be done for the year. We've got a lot to get through today. I'm gonna try and make it as quick as I can so you guys will have as much time as possible to get the assignment done. So let's go ahead and get started with what we're doing today, and that is talking about the Manhattan Project. Okay, so for today, we're going to look at these three things, and we will get into the next one hopefully later this week, next week maybe. So we're going to understand why the project was created. We'll understand why and what the project was. What was it for? What was its end goal? We're going to look at some key individuals who were involved in this project, military leaders, scientists, that kind of thing. Some of the names you'll recognize, some of them you'll probably have never heard of before. And that's all well and good. We'll hopefully by this you'll know at least know who they are. We're going to be able to explain the reasons behind the decision to use the atomic bombs on Japan. And the kind of controversy that surrounds the decision even today. People still talk about whether it was a good idea, even today, almost 75 years later. People are still talking about this. So, first thing is, why was this project created? The idea of a nuclear weapon itself was completely science fiction until the late 1930s when a couple German scientists accidentally discovered the process of nuclear fission. Essentially what that means is they figured out the way to combine atoms together to make a giant explosion. And after this news got out, a couple months later, American scientists Leo Szilard and Albert Einstein, yes, that Albert Einstein, wrote a letter to President Roosevelt with the concern that Germany was going to attempt to use this process of nuclear fission to develop what they called a super weapon. And so President Roosevelt responded to all of this by creating a commission to begin studying whether this was even possible. Could this happen? And for the first couple years from 1938 up until the beginning of 1942, it was largely just civilian scientists working in different parts of the country, researching different things. There was no kind of set group on this. That changed once we entered World War II, and President Roosevelt created this idea of the Manhattan Project and put U.S. Army General Leslie Groves in charge of the project. So where did this all happen? The project was spread out across the United States, but it was largely focused in three places. The University of Chicago, a factory in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and then the place some of you might be familiar with, the testing site at Los Alamos, New Mexico. Chicago was largely an area where just research into plutonium, uranium, and other nuclear materials was done. They didn't build the bomb in Chicago. They didn't any of that kind of stuff. They just kind of researched with plutonium, uranium, just to see what would be needed, how much would be needed to do what they were hoping to. Oak Ridge, Tennessee, was actually where a lot of the uranium plutonium production took place. So a lot of where they did what they needed to do to the uranium, to the plutonium, a lot of that took place in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And then Los Alamos was where a majority of the research into the physics, the production, the chemistry behind all of this, into the idea of nuclear fission and bombs took place. And it took place under the direction of leading physicist Robert Oppenheimer. So just to give you an idea of some of the big names in all of this, we'll start here. This is Robert Oppenheimer. He's the leading scientist in charge of research for the Manhattan Project. Was the leading physicist at this time. Often referred to as the father of the atomic age. Enrico Fermi was another one of the leading scientists, as was Ernest Lawrence here. Now, this guy on the bottom, he is Leslie R. Groves, and he was the military commander who President Roosevelt put in charge of coordinating all of the research, production, that kind of thing. So General Groves here was the guy who worked with Oppenheimer to coordinate all the different scientists, all the different research, the production, and make sure everything was going the way it should, make sure the project was running on time, making sure the project was doing what it was supposed to, making sure there wasn't any kind of fighting between the scientists and the army. You name it. This guy was he was the figurehead in charge of running everything, make sure it ran the way it was supposed to. So this research really took off in 1942, and over the course of the next 2-3 years, research went on in absolute secrecy. It was paramount to the president, to the U.S. government, that this remain as secret as it possibly could. It was so secret, in fact, that people working in the factory in Oak Ridge and all didn't even know they were building plutonium uranium until after the bomb was tested and used. Then they realized we had been working on the production for this. It was that secret. They were afraid that Germany was still actively trying to create this same weapon, and we wanted to be there first, so we kept this in absolute secrecy. And ultimately, it paid off with the first successful test of the world's first atomic bomb in the desert near Los Alamos, New Mexico, on July 16th, 1945. And that came to be known as the Trinity test. That is the first successful test of an atomic bomb in human history. And it happened on July 16th in Los Alamos, New Mexico. After the test was declared successful, Robert Oppenheimer had probably one of the most unnerving responses to this test once he realized what this bomb and what the research behind it could potentially lead to. I'm going to show you this clip real quick. It's about a minute, but he talks about his initial reaction after the test.
He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
So he's quoted as saying, and you heard in the video, "I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." No one really knew what this idea of the research in the Manhattan Project had created until they tested it and they saw the absolute power and destruction behind something like this. And a lot of people were convinced that humanity had just destroyed itself. They were afraid that if enough people, enough governments got this kind of technology, that they could destroy the world over. And that's a fear that wasn't entirely unfounded. But just his wording become Death Destroyer of Worlds was quite unnerving to a lot of people. So should the bombs have even been used? So as we talked about last time, the United States government, did end up using 2 of these. We dropped the first one on the city of Hiroshima on August 6th, and then 3 days later, on August 9th, we dropped the second on the city of Nagasaki. It's estimated that within 4 months of the 2 bombings, between 90 and 146,000 people died in the city of Hiroshima, and 39,000 to 90,000 in the city of Nagasaki from the effects of the bombing, from the bomb itself, from radiation, from sickness afterwards, from burns afterwards, just total numbers. Those are the estimates that have been given as far as total number of people killed because of this. And so, as I mentioned earlier, whether or not we should have used the bombs in the first place, no one was entirely sure we should have. We didn't know the long term, what effects long term, if any, there would be from this. Now we know that there's the radiation effects, there's the fallout effects, there's the bomb itself. Like, there's all this other stuff that happens afterwards that we now think of, well, yeah, of course that's going to happen. But this was brand new technology at this point. They didn't know about the increased possibilities of cancer, of other various physical issues once something like this was used. And a lot of people just felt outright that something that could kill almost 100,000 people in one bomb was just morally wrong. Like, that should not happen. We should not put ourselves in a position where we think that's the only option. So there were those who were morally opposed to the use of the atomic bombs, and then there were those who just were advocating for a straight up invasion of Japan. Some military commanders were saying, look, we don't need this. We just keep continuing this island hopping strategy. We'll invade Japan and we'll be done. But estimates given by the military put that if they had invaded and launched a full-scale invasion of Japan, American casualties would have been as high as 1 million. Ultimately, obviously, the decision was made by President Harry Truman to use the bombs as a show of force to all of America's enemies, both at the time, largely meaning Japan and, in a way, Russia, and to future enemies the U.S. may have. So ultimately, he decided to use these weapons, and so obviously he did, and the war ended in September of 1945. So what you're going to do today is you are going to answer, your assignment today is going to be, you are going to answer, in your opinion, this question here. Should the United States have dropped the atomic bombs on Japan? You're going to do this there's a way you're going to do this, and I'm going to explain here in a minute. On the next few slides, I have a few things I want you to look at, read through, just talking about the bombs, whether or not what people's thoughts on it. Your assignment is going to be to write a 4-sentence paragraph explaining where your thoughts are on this. Do you think we should have used the bombs? Do you not think we should have? Could we have done it the way we've been doing it, or were the bombs just necessary? Should we have used these? And I'll go through and I'll run through those real quick for you, but you'll be doing this on Canvas like always. So the first one, and then they're on the next slide here. So this first one here is just a estimate prepared by the U.S. military of potential casualties from the use of the bombs. Table A here breaks it down by the pre-raid population of each city, so how many people lived in each city before the bomb was dropped, the number of estimated people that would be killed instantly, and then the total number of people they thought would be injured, and then just total numbers. Okay. The table B here just breaks down how they thought most of the injuries would come about. So a majority of people would die from just burns, falling debris, other issues. things we didn't know might happen, and so on. So that just gives you an idea of what the military was looking at going in. Here's what we think will happen if we use these, based off of what they knew at this point in time. So this is a document from a textbook, just talking about the different people in the U.S. government and their thoughts on this. It talks about the Admiral William Leahy, Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Secretary of War, the Secretary of State, and even President Truman himself. I'll read you real quick what President Truman wrote about it. He wrote that he regarded the bomb as a military weapon and never had any doubts that it should be used. His advisors had warned him to expect massive casualties if the United States invaded Japan. Truman believed it was his duty as president to use every weapon available to save American lives. So there's that one. This one is part of a paper written by a person who survived the atomic bombs. This person was, I believe, 12 or 13 at the time of the atomic bombing, and he just describes his experience with it, what he saw the day it happened and the days afterwards. I didn't include all of it here because it's rather long. I'm pretty sure I put the link to it in the description, the sources slide, if you want to read the whole thing. It is kind of disturbing to read, just describe what he describes, but if you want to read the full thing, feel free, but all you'll need for this is just this part I've put here. This one is from a U.S. soldier who wrote his thoughts on the use of the bomb. He, in short, is for the use of the bomb, for the sole fact that he'd seen enough fighting. He did not want to be anywhere near the front lines again. And he thought, hey, if this bomb can potentially end the war like tomorrow, why not? Why not use it? So there's his thoughts on it. And then this is a picture taken, I'm not sure exactly when, but a few days or a few weeks after, might have been even been the next day, of this area just within a mile or two of where the bomb actually exploded. And you can just see the absolute devastation that this thing caused. And then here are the different sources that I used for this. So again, you were going to go back and you were going to use the information starting here in these slides to answer the question, should the United States have dropped the atomic bomb? For this assignment, when you write your paragraph on Canvas, you need to have at least 4 sentences, and I need you to pick 2 of the 5 slides that we just talked about. So 2 of the slides starting here. There are 5. You pick 2, and you use those to kind of justify your reasoning behind this. So you can tell me yes or no you think the bomb should or should not have been used. That's completely your opinion. I'm not going to try and tell you one way or another because there is no true right answer to this. But I just want you to use the information that I gave you to kind of come up with your opinion on it and have something to kind of support it. Otherwise, this will be due on Thursday at 8 a.m. like always. If you have any questions, shoot me an email or Canvas, and I'll be obviously more than willing to help you as much as I can. Otherwise, we are good to go here. I hope you guys have a good day. If you need any other help with this, feel free to let me know.